Hey everybody, how you doing? This is the Same Dad Podcast. I'm Jesse, and this is my sister Kellie. The point of this show is we're step siblings, and we share the same father, and we're full of wild stories and maybe separate points of view, but it should be pretty entertaining as we just talk about random stuff and laugh. And I hope at the end of this, it's not 45 minutes you wish you had back. Hopefully, we help you forget about some of the bullshit in your life for a little bit, and we just take you on a little journey. So, I guess starting out today, before we started this, I got a I got a phone call from mom and dad, just checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing, and we revisited a pretty gnarly accident at the Indy 500 back in 1955. Uh, it all started because the conversation stemmed from last weekend because during my Sunday Zoom session with the folks, I had mentioned that I saw that Dale Earnhardt Jr. had a new uh, sitcom or biography type show where he travels around and he finds lost, overgrown racetracks all across the country, spanning from one coast to the other. And the one episode just happened to be the first one of it I ever seen. What covered a old racetrack in trying to think of what it was. Oh fuck! What was the name of the town? It was Bloomingdale, Indiana. It was called Jungle Park. Believe it or not, that was the name of it. An old
Jungle Park.
yeah, an old blown out dirt track where a lot of the famous IndyCar guys race. I think they linked in over 100 guys that raced in the Indy 500 or professional race car drivers that were actually turning a profit racing. And the documentary was pretty good. It talked about a lot of the fatalities and all the crazy shit that would go on there. And I figured it'd be a neat thing to bring up during our weekly Zoom session. And lo and behold, Dad had been there over 10 times, he said. He said old Papaw Franklin took him out there to watch the races, and he was telling different stories. And then, of course, if you're an Indiana race fan, in like a bizarre, psychotic kind of way, I don't know, we don't necessarily take pride, but there's like a mystique or a romance to the death toll of a track. Like there's stories linked in of why and who and everything. And he brought up a story of a guy at the 1955 Indy 500 named Bukovic was his last name. I can't think of his first name. It was like John or Dan or something. You can YouTube it now. Just type in Bukovic 1955 Indy 500 wreck, and Dad said it was the worst one he'd ever seen. And so I watched it several times. It was back then they raced those old cars that were basically custom made for somebody getting maimed. I mean, I couldn't sit around and engineer a more fucked up, dangerous thing to go as fast as you can in. Like, it's open in the back, big ass long engine in the front, shaped like a cigar, and had narrow wheels that stuck out on all four sides. And this dude tied his wheels up with another guy, and he flew clean off the track on the straightaway, and he was in the lead, set to win it for the third time straight, which still nobody's ever done. And he flipped ass over tea kettle probably 12 times as fast as I've ever seen a car flip. and the dude was dead, obviously, on impact or broken neck or whatever. And the crazy thing was, there was the guy that he got tangled with flipped upside down, and the car was laying on him. And this third dude with massive balls gets out of his car while there's cars racing by on the track to try to yank this other dude out of this pinned car. It was just crazy. But the craziest thing was that I just randomly brought up this track, and like our dad had been there like numerous times. He said at least 10 times to watch the crazy ass races at this place called Jungle Park.
Hey, Jess, I just looked it up. You want to hear how it's described on Facebook? You'll really get a kick out of this. It says, quote, "It's been over 50 years since the big cars roared around the Park County Racing Bowl. It was a track where a driver could hardly tell how many curves there were or where the next one started. It was a place where engine noises echoed off the trees and hills like voices in a cave. If you go there, you may experience the presence of ghosts as well. Perhaps you will encounter a spire darting off the track into the trees or flitting from seat to seat in the old grandstand, empty for so many years. The ghosts are most certainly there." That was something written by a Tom W. Williams, Jungle Park Speedway.
Yeah, it's wild. You can still see the shape of the track, but it's all grass now. And Dad asked me, he said, I remember that old wooden grandstand. It had the overhang on it, and I said, "Man, Dad, it's still there. That the grandstand's still in good shape, and the entryway to the track when you drive in, it's all still there." And they brought some old guys on the show, and one of them said he flew off the turn, went 20 feet in the air and hit the top of a tree, and then fell that 20 feet plus the 10 feet a tree length. So he fell 30 feet back into the woods, and he lived. And then another guy got flung out of his car just right that he hit the road. That there's like a bridge that goes along the far side of the track, and it catapulted him perfect. And the height of the road, he just landed on the road, and he got up and walked back to the track.
That's crazy. Yeah, you should see these images as we sit here and talk. This is amazing. I can see the overhangs you're talking about, and those big open wheels. It makes me think about, Dad used to always have those old soapbox derby cars in the extra spare bedroom. And it's exactly what those cars look like. They're these, but they're made for real men to drive around this track. It's amazing. And it's just from a boyhood imagination, he created these soapbox derbies that mimic these very cars that went, how many miles an hour did you say?
No, I don't know. Too fast for what they looked like, that's for sure. Yeah, it's crazy. Them guys would risk their lives just every day. They shut the track down in 1960. I think the last race, a guy flew off the track and crushed a lady from Terre Haute.
How many stories about Terre Haute did we hear growing up?
Yeah, no kidding.
The thing that makes me kind of chuckle is it takes, lady, as you described, a lady getting crushed for, we give time, this is too much. Crushed lady, we're out.
Yeah, liability, we're done.
But
probably just the wrath from all the women was enough to. It's one thing for like guys to take their kids out there and when grown men are getting mangled, it's kind of forgiven. But if you squish a lady in the stands, you're kind of screwed there. You gotta. I don't know what kind of insurance there was back then. I doubt there was any. You just showed up at your own risk. They had people would just stand on the edging of the track, like on the infield, and kids would get up on that big fence, about a 20-foot high fence, and stand on that and balance by holding onto a tree. Just wild. I don't know. I guess things were way different back then.
Yeah, Yeah, we say yes, but not necessarily. I didn't go this year, but if you're from the area that we're from, one of the big events is the Little 500. Since we're about 40 miles north of Indianapolis, every racetrack in the Donut County area tries to mimic some kind of racing event like the Little Five or like the 500. And this is a quarter-mile track with full-size open wheel sprint cars. And you think, well, this is, we've had multiple decades to enhance safety. They've got harnesses, they've got all these safety mechanisms in place. Still, almost every year there's somebody that's either taken away in an ambulance, or the fencing's not big enough, or somebody's kid in the audience gets something flung in their eye and they're over to the med check. I mean, it's never ending, but we continue because we as spectators here in Indiana, it's what we live for. It's like the as my husband calls it, we're casualty vampires. It's kind of born in us.
Yeah, yeah. That's I went to an enduro race here in Iowa, and it was at the Cedar Rapids Speedway. I don't know what the hell the name of it is. It's got I don't know. They put around 100 four-cylinder cars out there, kind of like the old English banger races, where they just bunch of compact vehicles and they set up a course, and then they set the lap count high enough to where it lasts a few hours. And there was a guy, it just went up in flames, some guy's car, and all he had on was a helmet, a t-shirt, and some pants. And he got out of the car, made about 10 steps, and he never moved again. And the car was just a complete engulfment. And I just that weekend prior, I had seen that wrestler burn up. That's another good story we can share. But 2 weekends in a row, I see a guy burn up. And this guy, the ambulance come in from downtown. You could hear the sirens, and they come in on the track, and they flop his limp body up on the gurney, and his arm's hanging there, and the lady has to lift his arm up and put it on him. And then, like, I remember everybody being extraordinarily interested, and I was still trying to get over the trauma that I had witnessed the weekend before in a blown out Winn-Dixie in Connersville, Indiana. But there was a mom that come up the walkway, the bleachers, with some hot dogs and popcorn and soda, and her 2 or 3 children like met her halfway and said, "Mommy, you missed it. A guy burned up. A car caught on fire." And then in a sense of excitement, and then the mom was like, "Oh, I missed it, man, son of a gun." And I'm thinking, man, here's this dude, he's probably dead. They just flopped him on the gurney and took him out of there. The whole car was just a fireball. It was hideous. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't watch racing if it was remote controlled. I don't think. I mean, you got to have that sense of danger and insanity. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Demolition derbies, monster trucks, all that stuff. That's the excitement.
Now, Jess, you're a little younger than I am. Not really a little, but by about 10 years. And you may not remember some of these stories, but we, I would be on a weekend trip with Dad. We'd go to the racetrack here in our hometown, and it was nothing for a 10, 11-year-old to stay up at least till 1 o'clock. Bleary-eyed, dust in your eyes. You look around, and most little kids have headphones on to protect their hearing, but you're just like exposed to the elements, and you're like wondering if you can hear on the way home. But riding home in an old panel wagon, station wagon, facing backwards, dirt, dust covered. You'd watched everything under the sun. You'd heard everything. You'd seen about at least, 50 drunk people. You've seen, every combination of family unit, uh, you know, like you just said, really cheering on and hoping that you could see some kind of casualty while you're out there, or you wouldn't feel like it was worth your $15. And I remember one of the last times I was at our local speedway, that's exactly what happened. There was it was kind of mid to post COVID, and we were all sitting. Here we were outside, but yet we were sitting the 6 feet distance plus, and nothing had changed, and there was some fencing on the third turn, and that's always the risky spot to stay in. And you talked about the figure eights. That's if you went as a kid, you'd always ask your dad or whomever, hey, are they gonna have figure eights tonight? Yeah, they're gonna have the figure eight buses.
Yeah, those guys were as a kid, I worshiped the ground them guys walked on. I mean, they were the fucking gladiators. You know what I mean? They put asses in the seat.
Oh,
You go to a circus, I don't give a fuck about jugglers and shit. You give me the dude shot out of a cannon. I'm paying my $20 to see his ass fly. You know what I mean? I mean they were the cream of the crop to me growing up. Them figure eight guys, for sure.
absolutely. And then you'd look down, and some nights would be a little lean on the EMTs, and you'd think, oh shit, they're gonna, there's not enough help in case this thing goes wrong. And
Yeah, the 3 EMTs they have look like they might have a heart attack if they run if they run 20 feet.
Probably the most active people out there were the guys running with the the wet dry or whatever, and like the big shuffling with the brooms. That was probably the most exercise they'd gotten in the last month. You're on, there's an oil spill, get out there, Bill. Yeah, that's definitely part of growing up. You talked about Dale Earnhardt Jr., and I'll never forget. And these are other things that were like typical for the area that we grew up in. There was a restaurant chain named Grindstone Charlie's, and Seth and I were sitting out, and we were watching the race where Dale Earnhardt was killed in that crash. And you saw that crash, and it was just so unassuming. You kind of hit the wall straight on, but you didn't think much about it. And we were big, again, racing fans. And, then here we are eating dinner, and about 20 minutes later, they announced that he's dead. And that's about the time that the Hans device was developed, shortly thereafter. But, you always, growing up in Indiana, you always assume that someone who may be killed on the racetrack, that was just part of their destiny, if that's what they chose to do. And so it was kind of experiencing death at a very early age, but in a way that was almost like honorable because it was on the racetrack.
Yep, you get the Viking funeral. Yep. And then all the stories that would tie in forever. And I remember I remember that speedway there in town. They would have demolition derby night back when this was the 80s and early 90s, back when people had money to waste. So you'd have like 150 cars enter this thing. No class system. I mean, if you had a big car and you made a mistake of bringing a little one, well, that's your problem. And they just there'd be 100, 150 of these things, and they wouldn't just section off the straightaway. They would line them up ass to ass on each side of the straightaway, and they'd have the entire content of the speedway to smash each other. Like the whole inner area, like whatever you could make do, you'd crush into each other, and there wouldn't be a blade of grass left. And gosh, it'd go on until started about 7:30, and like you said, it'd go on till about 1 easy, and they would go until one guy was left out of all them cars. They do like 30 at a time till there was one left, and it was so savage and insane, but man, as a kid, it was the coolest thing.
Yeah. And if you were lucky enough to go on 4th of July weekend, man, those fireworks were some of the best in town.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's how I got my fill of fireworks. I think I wasn't always the biggest fan of fireworks, but damn, they were so good as a child, you know. You can only do so much with that. To me, they were like the equivalent of like Disneyland. I mean, they were that good.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
probably had a bunch of drunk hillbillies shooting them off, so they just sent them up in the air in any rhyme or reason.
And whether it'd been 2 years since you'd been there, you just were dropped into a time capsule of whatever that experience was supposed to be. And, you know, good news is, I guess, is that, you know, our local speedway lives on, unlike a lot of the ghosts or relics of the other towns that we've talked about, like Bloomingdale and others. You know, ours is still pretty thriving. Gets a lot of flack because, you know, yeah, it collects and attracts all kinds, but it's really a good cross section of middle Indiana, quite frankly. So it's historical for sure.
Yeah, it definitely competes with the Walmart crowd. It's it's like that, but oily. I,
And deaf.
yeah, it's Coors Light and bad hearing.
Man,
Yeah.
and heaven forbid you have to go to a bathroom there because the facilities have just degraded over time. I can't imagine what the men's facilities look like, but I'm quite sure that the women's have degraded to the men's facilities, or they look a little bit like a trough situation. So I can't imagine. And we were I think some of the family were there. Actually, my son went with his dad and some others not long ago, and they finally stopped selling their version of the elephant ear, which was the flat tire.
Oh,
He was all excited about that, and no more flat tire.
damn. I remember the last big surge it had was probably 2000, early 2000s. It was doing pretty good for itself. I remember me and my high school buddies would go out there and watch those figure eights, as you had mentioned, and it was when they reinstated the Thunder cars. They were just like full-size cars with a number spray painted on them, and then some guy would zip tie a Garfield doll in the back window or something. And yeah, one guy had some Longhorn horns on his car. That set of Longhorn probably was more than that car was worth, and he stuck them on there, and they'd get about 25 of them out there for the figure eight, and they would do the Michael Buffer, "Let's get ready to rumble." They'd play that and some stadium music, man. You just get lathered up, just fired up. You know, you got 4 or 5 beers in you, and it's fucking time. You know, this is what the sores on your ass are for. You know, the bleacher marks and the you know, the shitty, like, unkept environment. It's all for this moment, this 20 laps of mayhem, and that's what it was, man. They'd kick up so much dust and dirt, and God, it was a sight to see.
Yeah, you'd get there and you'd swear you'd tell the whole family, now listen, bring a jacket, we're going to bring a blanket, and the farther you'd set up in those grandstands, of course, the colder. I don't care if it was 85 in the day, you'd get there, and by night, with a little breeze in those grandstands, you'd swear it was 40 degrees. And there'd always be a time where, by 10:30, 12, 11 o'clock, whoever in your group, like, man, I'm cold. I wish I would have brought. Yes, we told you. And so it was just like it was like a whole different environment. You get there, and by nightfall, it seemed like it was fall. But it was, you wouldn't trade it for the world. But man, you would just like grin and bear it. And then the family would always look around. Okay, what car are you picking? You had no sense of who was even a good driver. It was just, well, I like yellow and the number 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to Dad too. You've been watching Skinwalkers.
I wish I could say yes, but there's not anyone in this family that has guts enough to watch it with me.
Oh, I love
So
that.
by the time I get access to the television, it's usually either too late or it's not convenient to try to watch them.
They ended their they ended their second season last night. It's in that ranch out in Utah, and a bunch of scientists and whatnot are out there. One of them's a pretty neat guy from Alabama, from Huntsville, Alabama, real smart guy, 3 or 4 degrees. He had a show on one of those offbeat Discovery type channels a few years ago called Rocket City Rednecks, where they were like Mythbusters basically. They would build shit and do stunts or whatever, and so we had grown fond of him, my wife and I, and to see him in this show is pretty neat. But anyway, they found an area where just right above the ranch where they think there's a lot of UFO activity. So next season they're gonna basically send a blimp up, but keep it tied to the ground and put it right in the sweet spot. And there's so much to say about it. Me and Mom and Dad, we talk about paranormal a lot. I'm a big paranormal guy. I love all that stuff. And we were talking, with the government releasing a lot of footage that they've released, I think within 5 years we'll have open contact with aliens and UFOs. And I told Dad, I said, it's possible that Eli might impregnate one. That might end up being my daughter-in-law. And Dad said, yeah, she'll have 8 tits and she'll be laid out on the front porch suckling all your kids. You can imagine like a green woman draped on my front porch with 8 tits and 8 Eli's down there nurturing. I probably
Oh, I can't even comment on that.
Yeah. I'm ready, man. Bring on the fucking aliens. I think Eisenhower already talked to a few of them. I think it's coming, and then it's going to change. We're going to look at shit how we looked at stuff here way different. Like, we're already at a point where we're starting to get over stuff, but we're going to be way over some stuff if we realize that, holy shit, we are just a little part of the big picture. I wonder what that'll do just as far as our nations are concerned and things of that nature. Economic system and religion and all that.
Yeah, all these constructs that we put up. What a waste of time. What a waste of time, worry, and energy when it's all really for naught.
Yeah.
It's well, you and I tune into some different things when it comes to that front, but to have that theory about 5 years out that we may have alien contact is kind of a intriguing one. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, we could touch on that more later or whatever, but yeah, I think so. I think we're getting close. I think the government's open about it now. They just put up videos all the time what the fuck is this thing flying on my radar? Why is there
Well,
7 or 8 of them?
see, I don't really understand why they're putting cameras into the sky when all they have to do is put cameras into any local Waffle House at like 3 a.m. I mean, there's sightings all the time. I mean, I don't know why
Yeah,
they're
I've seen
trying so hard.
I've seen a few Bigfoots, some members of the missing link, some on the Darwin chart in there eating their loaded hash with some.
You know, there's only like 5 ingredients in all of any Waffle House. I said White Castle, but any Waffle House, you know, it's any mixture of any 5 ingredients, one of 5 ingredients. And I think I had that epiphany only like a couple months ago. We went to Waffle House because it seemed to be, you know, my husband had been dealing with unfortunately cancer treatment, and when you recover from some of your eating habits, basically breakfasts are your go-to. And so we were going to a lot of Waffle Houses. It was like you said earlier at the start of this conversation, as long as there's gravy, you know, you can pretty much go for it.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I kept looking at the menu to try to figure out something else. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's 5 ingredients in this whole place. It's just a different combination of everything. So yeah, that was the night. The last one I remember was in Jeffersonville, Indiana. We were coming back from a basketball tournament about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We were starving, and we stopped at this Waffle House. And wouldn't you know it, I got my favorite, the pecan waffle. And somebody had been doing their due diligence and cleaning off the syrup pitchers, but whomever had cleaned them did not put the lids on tightly. So I consequently go to put syrup on my waffle, and I mean, syrup spills everywhere but the waffle. So, and I'll never forget, so there had to be this this conversation behind the counter about who was going to clean it up, because about every 3rd person behind the counter said they had a tactile issue of touching syrup. They openly admitted, which is fine, but like, what are the chances that every 3rd employee of the Waffle House would have a tactile issue, unable to touch a sticky substance?
Yeah, you can't discriminate. You can't be denied a job because you won't
clean up syrup.
Yeah, you won't play in the syrup.
Hey, that wasn't asked of me in the interview. Well, so guy steps up and he cleans it all up, but you know, it was the last Waffle House experience was in Jeffersonville, Indiana, just across the border from Louisville, Kentucky.
Let's see, when was mine? I don't think mine can top that one, but it was it was on the way to, I think it was right on the outskirts of Dallas. When I lived in Wichita Falls, Texas, Mom and Dad were actually with us. We went into a Waffle House, and there was this bus boy that wouldn't stop shuffling over to us and talking about playing football. Like, he just wanted to make sure that we knew that he played football at some point in his life, and I could tell just from his behavior that it didn't take very long. I mean, he had me convinced that he took blows to the head. So he might have played without a helmet, this dude. I mean, he was something else. He just kept wanting to tell us all these tackles and all this shit he did, which was alright, that's fine. I mean, whatever, I guess. I'm trapped here. You got me. So, you know, we had to kind of endure that and humor this poor guy, but I don't know. He was an interesting fella.
Man, you know, they make some of the best jelly toast there is. I mean, you can't even replicate it at home. I don't know what it is, the butter, if they put the bread on the griddle, and then, you've got these packets of jelly, which usually, you're applying yourself. But I mean, what is it? You get there and you think, oh, this is the last resort. No, this is what we intended. This is the best. I think at our last visit, like I was mentioning, also in that same visit, you could look at any corner of the dining room. You see a first date over here just wrapping up. You see a mother and her newest boyfriend trying to feed the 3 kids, and he's not very tolerant of their behavior, but he's trying to make a good impression on her. And he's going all out by taking her out to the Waffle House. And then there's us, who we're trying to feed the one person on our family that can only tolerate eggs, and so this is why we're here. But I have to say, as we're leaving that evening, everybody they were very congenial, great service, good value for what we got. We walk out, and the guy is smoking a doobie out in the in the car. He's on break, of course. It's his liberty, it's his right, and I don't know the laws necessarily in just over the Kentucky border, but the bottom line was the guy kind of tips his hat to us, who's cleaned up my syrup, as he takes a big guff off of his joint. Like, thank you and have a good night.
Yeah, that's Waffle House.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Well,
It's like it's like a Waffle House would be like a studio jam session with Jim Croce. Then he decides not to publish it and just balls it up and throws it away. all the crazy characters.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got? What else you got, Jess? Anything else that's on your mind tonight?
No, not really. An old wrestler I used to watch passed away the other day.
Oh yeah, who's that?
Paul Orndorff. I got the luxury of meeting Paul at in Wichita Falls at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Me and Nicole went in there and waited in line to meet the guy, and it was worth every bit of it. We went up to him and I thanked him. I said, "Hey man, look, I want to thank you for putting up with Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, or we wouldn't have WrestleMania today." Because his biggest role in wrestling was he would turn from good guy to bad guy and then back to good guy to help build up the very first tag team main event of the very first WrestleMania. So I had an opportunity to thank him for that, and he went on saying he wishes he would have never took wrestling as serious as he did when he started talking about some of his neck injuries. And he went to sign an autograph, and I remember as he was signing it, Nicole had mentioned Eli's name, our son Eli, and then he paused for a second, like asking, "Well, you want me to put his name on here?" And we said, "No, go ahead and just make it just a neutral autograph. Just sign your name, put Mr. Wonderful on there." And so, I mean, he was just a really cool, thoughtful guy. So it was really neat to have the opportunity to have met that guy. And yeah, he just passed away a couple days ago. 71, I think, was his age. So it was kind of neat to see him.
Very cool. Wrestling was very ever present in your childhood and growing up, and your play and your fantasy and your learning about life and competition and pageantry and all of that went into that. And so I know that's important to you. That's one thing growing up in the household that I did, kind of going along with, to mention, Jess and I have the same dad, obviously, but grew up pretty much in different households. And to that point, ironically, I was never really allowed to watch wrestling just because it was, viewed as some form of fighting and boxing. Those things growing up in a all women household, those were not real welcome things to watch on television. And so, all of the stories about wrestlers I hear from you and Dad, and didn't get to have that same experience. So that's where we diverge.
Yeah, I always just like the larger than life characters, the behavior, the way that they can control the fans if they're really good at what they do. Is it just the energy. It's not as good as it used to be. It's kind of the drizzled shits now, but back when I was a kid in the 80s, it was on fire. It was good. Everything was good. Speaking of fighting, did you see the McGregor broke his ankle?
No, I didn't. How do you do that? Just in a
Stepping
match?
backwards in the ring, accident. What do you think about? Before I forget, I don't know. This may go on and on, but what do you think of college athletes getting paid? That's happening now as of July 1st. As far as
Yeah. So I'd like for you to lay out a little bit about your thoughts on it. Now, I feel a little unguarded because I know that we have some differing opinions on this, but so what has been allowed starting in July, I guess?
endorsements. I mean, they're not getting paid. They're not getting paid a salary.
Right.
Not green sticks of veggies. That's what they get, and peanut butter on it. Celery. Wouldn't have celery, but they can stick it up their ass. But
I knew
they
you.
but they can do endorsements, Gatorade, shoes, shit like that. As far as I know, sky's the limit.
So I'm gonna guess that, and then I'll tell you what I think. I think I have an opinion about it. But so if I had to guess, your opinion is when we go to this, it totally will wipe out everything we knew of as just pure college competition. The amateur sports scene is pretty much abolished as we know it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I guess the dynamics of, let's say you're a popular quarterback and for USC, that's over there near Hollywood. Typically, those quarterbacks or running backs hobnob with the Will Ferrells of the world and them guys anyway, and they usually have a name that fits and they're your typical what you would expect. And anyway, now you take a guy like that and allow him to do commercials over there with people or endorse businesses and whatever the like. Once he's wealthy and he's a hero there, why would he go to the New York Jets and get shit hammered and look
I
like
see.
ass for 2 years when he can just kick back and do car commercials or just be the local hero and sponge it up? Like, why would you step out of those comfort zones anymore?
I see what you're saying. So if you can get all of both the limelight and the endorsements and so the good salaries and the limelight and all of that while you're in college, why would you ever try to advance to the pros? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like why tarnish your greatness? And you look back, a couple of names come to mind real quick: Reggie Bush and Johnny Manziel. For guys that, because Manziel basically, once Texas A&M joined the SEC, like, he's the only resume they really have. I mean, he put the place on the map, and I'm sure he was getting paid illegally in some way or another. But my God, if he could have come along now as a freshman he'd have so much money by the end of his college career. Yeah, he could just be done.
So no incentive to ever
Right.
strive for the
And
pros. Yeah.
if you look in the history of time, we're just touching football here but it's been hard for the NFL's in its early inception to separate from the college game. Just to get the NFL started, the American Football League and everything, because those guys back then, like Rutgers and Harvard and shit and Yale, they were packing stadiums, and then people just didn't understand why they needed pro football. And I think it's going to get interesting too, because with this free advertisement and the fact that they're going to expand that playoff to 12 teams here in 2 or 3 years, I don't know what the dynamic of the NFL is going to turn into. I don't know what that's going to do.
Yeah. I think ultimately, there's things that have evolved that have come out of the professional sports arena, and I think, like, so for example, we were watching, it was like a celebrity golf outing where, there's everybody who like scratch golfers, like Steph Curry's a scratch golfer, Justin Timberlake. I mean, some of these all walks of life, but a lot of pro sports figures. And Romo, I can't think of his first name, the Dallas.
Tony.
Tony was one of the golfers in this tournament, and to look at him physically, I mean, he's not even my age yet, but to look at him in the short term that he had in the NFL, because he probably physically was not designed to take the kind of hits that he took as a quarterback. I think there's going to be an evolution, because the career in professional football, since we're on the subject, is not going to be 10 plus years. It is going to be at the very most 3 to 5 years, kind of like the Romos. So he's probably an indicator of really what the average man can endure and still have some sort of longevity in life. They're not going to be the gladiators and the stars that we remember and aspire to and couldn't wait for Monday and Sunday night football. I do think those days are probably gone, and a lot of that has to do with, I think, all the research with the brain injury and those kinds of things. I think that had already catapulted us down that road. So you look at the lifespan of a college athlete or a professional or elite athlete, I think it's a lot more short term than we thought. So I think they're trying to, I think this is just a natural evolution about them gaining the rewards that may need to come to them in that short period of time, and then they're going to move on. But it's not going to be the same. It's just not going to be the same.
Yeah, the motivation, the GoPro is going to diminish greatly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Probably even faster in basketball.
Yeah, well, tell me about, so basketball is another kind of an uncharted territory for me. I mean, I grew up mostly exposed to football, and then really only in the last 2 years or 3 years, really tuning in more to professional basketball, just because the household kind of has an interest in basketball these days.
As far as my knowledge of basketball, as far as keeping players, I assume, they make it now where they have to go to college for 1 year, but then they can take classes like Disney literature online or something, just so they're there for a year. But I'm thinking, man, if they can get a 6U deal and some Gatorade commercials, I might rock that 4 years out and then never even think about the NBA. Because even the college schedule of games is lighter than the NBA schedule. They play like 100 or something games in the NBA, In college, it's like 25 a year or something like that, not counting the tournament.
The thing I think about are the coaches that had kind of created those puppy mills, if you will, like the Caliparis and the Coach K's. I mean, essentially think about all of the earnings that those coaches made in recruiting into the school, knowing that within 1 or 2 years most of their recruits were going to cycle into the NBA. That's why they were hired, even though they were going to try to find the biggest stars for those colleges, and all the hype and all of the ticket sales and fanware that was going to be, all the merchandise that came along with that. They're recruiters. And some would say, and I'm not saying it's necessarily my language, but some would say that they were kind of the pimps of the industry, bringing in, and I'm just an agent to get you to the next phase for about 1 or 2 years, and then you can go on and you've done your part for our school. It will be interesting to see. There won't be players that will move up like that anymore. And the Caliparis, their days may be numbered in terms of their usefulness to the industry, if you will.
Yeah, I see. It's just like they're just kind of a middleman, a representative more than a really
More than a coach. And I've often always thought about that. Do you ever think about at that level, the NBA, and you see coaches in a huddle and they bring the chairs around, they've got the whiteboard. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are they teaching these guys that they haven't learned already when they were 12? You know what I mean? And so it's a matter of really keeping your poise and staying focused and motivated, but that's about it. There's nothing that those coaches are doing but giving them a breather so they can kind of regroup and do their thing.
Yeah, especially if you're talking like Kansas or Kentucky or these high-powered basketballs. I mean, just to get to that point, these kids already know all they need to know. I mean, they're already extraordinarily dominant if they're lucky to be the 5 guys on the court for Kansas at any given moment. Like, what's some other guy gonna say? I'm some old shriveled up dude that can't dunk the ball or run gonna tell me to dunk the ball and run.
Right.
I mean, what are you gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is he gonna jump higher? Be taller.
Yeah. Well, I think that the point of all of this is that everybody, other than the players to this point, have had their hand in the honeypot. And in my opinion, the system has created where we are today. And so this is the implosion of that system. And when you pluck kids, call it basketball or whether you're looking at football or otherwise, when you pluck kids from having nothing to having a little bit of something, and then understanding what in the big world their worth really is at a very, very young age, I cannot hardly blame a movement to help, bring forth what their just rewards are. I mean, I just can't. It's hard for me not to say that that's not a fair fight, but I know everybody feels kind of different about that, and I wouldn't say I'm extremely passionate about it. So
I'd say for me, for my gains, just as a unathletic fat dude that watches sports and plays a lot of video games, I'm gonna get my NCAA football back. That's been a yearly release that typically comes out a month prior to Madden every year. It's typically better than Madden. And oh fuck, I think it was 2014 was the last release of that game, and then they had a huge class action lawsuit because of the whole money deal putting, and the players didn't even look like the players. Like, they were the Vegas player models, and they had their jersey number, and they didn't have their name. But they set the game up to where people on the outside, the consumer, could put names in and adjust that. So people like Operation Sports and several other forums would generate yearly rosters, and then people would download them, and then they would have all the players. And they're still updating that old ass game to this day, which is amazing. But with this, players having the right to be paid for their likeness, I'll get my NCAA football back, which that's where I would benefit the most there. And I would benefit the most just almost as like, I love social experiments, so this is going to be a giant one, just watching and seeing how it unfolds. Because you got to think the alumni are going to play a factor. Like Stanford alumni could hook a dude up with like an IBM commercial or something, or you know what I mean? Like, come play over here, and we'll endorse all this freaking garbage that all our graduates have done, all these businessmen, or I mean, the whole dynamic of it is going to be crazy.
I never thought about that. So there will be a need for a whole host of managers, negotiators. I mean, that middle person that's going to help connect these young athletes to all these endorsements, and what's the good deal and what's the bad deal. I mean, there's going to be a whole need for good managers, again, like the Jerry Maguires are going to definitely come forth and become a little bit more dynamic in this negotiation.
Yeah, and where does it start? Does it start in high school?
Boy, that's the truth. Well, you see it already. I mean, there's no question about that. Even on a very small level in small towns, you've got inter-district recruiting going on in small town USA school districts. I can remember my son playing basketball when he was in 6th grade, and one of the local charter schools came to us in the bleachers and asked if we had thought about where he was going to go to middle school. And I thought to myself, wow, my kid is average at this moment in time at best. And if you're really either just trying to build a program, which is likely the case, but it was definitely an eye-opener for us.
I think this would be a good topic if we ever had Dad call in to the show. I think he would. I'd say that, and the race car history would be, and maybe the 8-titted alien lady. We could have him elaborate on that a bit.
You say the alien lady?
Yeah.
I
think trying to think if there's anything else. This is our first run through. I think I hope all our viewers or listeners enjoyed this, either while you were driving to a job you don't like, or maybe you locked yourself in the bathroom faking like you're taking a shit just so you can have some alone time. I hope you listened to us and enjoyed it. And I don't know, before we close out, anything to add?
No, I just want to say that I'm really excited about where this is going. 10 years between us, same dad, but a lifetime of experiences. I'm anxious to share what those look like, and how we viewed those. A lot of observations and a lot of things I think that represent two kids growing up in the Midwest. I think it's an adventure worth listening to.
Yeah, I think so too. We have, in closing, a few things. We're working on all the Twitters and all that shit. I went out and I secured all the SameDadPodcast user IDs. We got to get those going. If you have any comments, dislikes, likes, anything you'd like to add or correct about our conversation today, leave it in the YouTube comments. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and the little bell so you get our updates whenever we upload stuff. I'd like to say support your veterans. I'm a veteran. Even if you don't politically agree, just don't fuck with us and give us a hard time. Just be nice to us. Mental health, take care of your mental health. I've been through a lot of shit in the last couple of years. I've had to seek some professional help, so make sure you got your mind right. And autism awareness. My son Eli is autistic. Reach out, learn about autism, acceptance. We'll probably cover autism a lot during some of these episodes. Trying to think anything else that we could add in closing.
Bob, I think you've covered quite a bit. I think it's a great start to what we've thought about, and this is kind of the brain. You're the brainchild behind this idea of just all the stories. The campfire stories was kind of the spark that, no pun intended, but kind of got us rolling on this. And if you could bring the whole world into some of those intimate conversations that families have over campfires, and then you boil it even further down to that of the Midwestern family, and then specifically ours, I think there's plenty to talk about. So I look forward to it.
We're also open for guest appearances, movie star roles, commercial voiceovers. We'll come and announce midget wrestling or hot dog eating or midget eating and hot dog wrestling contests. I don't give a fuck, whatever one. You pay for my travel, I'll be there, and I'll even find some pants at Walmart and put them on. But yeah, that's it. I hope everybody enjoys this one, and we'll get everything put together. We'll get some shirts and cups and some thongs and all that shit. You can buy that. Support us. I love everybody. Take care.